In 1971, every single country on Earth owed a combined $500 billion. Today, that number is $105 trillion. That's not a typo. $105 trillion. The debt has multiplied by 210 times in just 54 years. But here's what nobody tells you. This isn't an accident. This isn't because countries are bad with money. This is the system working exactly as designed. Countries aren't supposed to escape debt. They're supposed to stay trapped, forever. And in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this trap works, and why your country, no matter where you live, can never get out. Let's go. Now, before we get into this, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to explain is not taught in schools. It's not discussed by mainstream economists. And politicians will never admit this publicly. Because if people truly understood how the global debt system works, the entire financial system would collapse overnight. So if you want to understand the real game being played with your country's money, if you want to know why your taxes keep going up but nothing gets better, if you want to see the trap that has every single nation on Earth locked in, then you're in the right place. Stick with me for the next 9 minutes. By the end, you'll never look at your country's economy the same way again. Let's break down the 5 parts of this trap. To understand the trap, we have to go back to 1971. August 15th, 1971. This is the day that changed everything. President Nixon walked into the White House and made an announcement that would shape the next 50 years of global economics. He ended the gold standard. Now, before 1971, every dollar was backed by gold. You could literally walk into a bank with a $100 bill and exchange it for gold. This meant governments couldn't just print money whenever they wanted, because if they printed too much, people would demand the gold and the system would collapse. It was a constraint, a limit, a rule. But on August 15th, 1971, Nixon removed that constraint. And overnight, money became nothing. It became paper, digital numbers, pure debt. And here's where the trap begins. When money is no longer backed by anything real, when governments can print unlimited amounts, the entire system becomes based on one thing: debt. Not wealth, not productivity, not value, debt. And once you're in a debt-based system, there's only one direction you can go: deeper into debt. Because the system requires constant borrowing to function. Let me show you why. Here's how the trap actually works on a mechanical level, and this is where it gets insane. Let's say your government wants to spend $1 billion on something: roads, schools, military, whatever. But they don't have $1 billion. So what do? They go to a central bank and say, "We need money." And the central bank says, "Okay, we'll create it." Now here's the key. The central bank doesn't create money for free. They create it as a loan. So the government gets $1 billion, but now owes $1 billion plus interest. Let's say 5% interest. So now the government owes $1.05 billion. But here's the problem. That extra $50 million in interest, that money was never created. It doesn't exist in the system. So where does it come from? More debt. The government has to borrow again to pay the interest on the original loan. And that new loan also has interest, which requires another loan, and another, and another. This is what's called a debt spiral, and it's mathematically impossible to escape, because the system requires more debt to service existing debt. It's like trying to dig yourself out of a hole. The more you dig, the deeper you go, and every country on Earth is in this hole. But it gets worse. Now you might be thinking, okay, but can't countries just grow their economy and pay off the debt? Great question. And this is where the trap gets even more sinister. See, to pay off debt, countries need money. And to get money, they need to either 1. Tax their citizens more, 2. Or export goods to other countries. Option 1 has limits. You can't tax people 100%. They'll revolt. So most countries try option 2, export their way out of debt. They manufacture products, sell them to other countries, and bring in foreign currency. Sounds reasonable, right? But here's the problem. For your country to export and make money, another country has to import and spend money, which means that country goes into more debt. So when Germany exports cars and runs a surplus, someone else has to import those cars and run a deficit. When China exports electronics and makes money, someone else has to buy those electronics and lose money. It's a zero-sum game. One country's surplus is another country's deficit. One country's escape is another country's deeper trap. The debt doesn't disappear, it just moves around, like a game of musical chairs where there are never enough chairs. And everyone knows that when the music stops, someone's going to be left holding all the debt. But who? Now, here's where the system gets really unfair. There's one country that doesn't play by the same rules, the United States. Why? Because the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. What does that mean? It means when countries trade with each other, they use dollars. When China sells electronics to Brazil, Brazil pays in US dollars. When Saudi Arabia sells oil to Japan, Japan pays in US dollars. About 60% of all global trade is done in US dollars, and about 60% of all global debt is denominated in US dollars. So here's the privilege. When America goes into debt, they borrow in their own currency. When they need to pay it back, they can just print more dollars. They control the printer. But when your country goes into debt, you're borrowing in dollars, a currency you don't control, so you can't just print your way out. You have to actually earn those dollars through exports, or you default. This is why America has $36 trillion in debt and nobody panics. But when Argentina has $400 billion in debt, the economy collapses. Because Argentina doesn't control the printer. They're trapped. And so is every other non-reserve currency country. About 190 countries are playing a game where America makes the rules and holds the only way out. But even America isn't truly safe, because the trap has one final level. So we've established. The system requires infinite debt growth. Countries can't export their way out because it's zero-sum. Most countries are trapped borrowing in dollars they can't print. So what's the end game? How does this end? There are only 3 possible outcomes. Outcome number 1, hyperinflation. Countries give up trying to pay the debt and just print money to cover it. The currency becomes worthless. We've seen this in Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Weimar Germany. Your savings evaporate overnight. Outcome number 2, default countries simply refuse to pay. They say, we can't pay this debt, we're done. This triggers economic collapse, mass unemployment, and usually war. We've seen this in Argentina, Greece, Russia multiple times. Outcome number 3, the Great Reset. This is what central banks and institutions like the IMF are quietly preparing for, a complete restructuring of the global financial system. All debt gets wiped, all currencies get replaced with new digital currencies, and everyone starts over. Except this time, the rules will be even tighter, because they'll control the currency at the digital level, every transaction tracked, every purchase monitored. Complete financial control. Now, which outcome will we get? Honestly, probably a combination of all 3. Different countries will collapse in different ways. Some will hyperinflate, some will default, and the ones that survive will participate in the reset. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the mathematical reality of a debt-based monetary system. The trap will close. The only question is when, and whether you're prepared.